They had never met, never spoken, never even knew the others existed. In 3 different corners of America, 3 men lived separate lives. One worked as a mechanic in Texas, another as a school teacher in California, and the third owned a small bookstore in upstate New York. Each of them believed they were an only child. Each grew up with unanswered questions about family, identity, and where they truly belonged. None of them could have imagined that a simple decision, a DNA test taken out of curiosity, would lead to a revelation that would change everything. It began when Michael, the bookstore owner, received an alert from 23andMe. You have a 50% DNA match, likely half-brother. At first, he thought it was an error, but days later, another match appeared, then another. Could it be true? Could he have brothers out there? Men who shared his blood but not his memories? A story that had been buried for over 40 years was beginning to surface. A story of separation, silence, and eventually reunion. Before they were brothers, they were just boys, growing up in 3 different worlds. Michael grew up in New York, raised by loving adoptive parents. But whenever he asked about his origins, they changed the subject. He felt like something was missing, a blank space in his story. David, in California, was raised by a single mother who never spoke of his father. He learned not to ask. But he couldn't ignore how his features didn't quite match his relatives. It was a quiet discomfort that stayed with him. James, the oldest, spent his early years in Texas, bouncing between foster homes. His only keepsake from his birth was a worn hospital bracelet with no last name. He had no idea siblings even existed. Each man built his own life, careers, friendships, even families. But beneath it all, there was a shared ache, the longing for a connection they couldn't quite name. And then, through DNA results and a few brave messages, that ache finally began to make sense. They were never truly alone. They were 3 branches from the same tree, just growing in different directions. They agreed to meet halfway, Kansas City, neutral ground, no expectations, just hope. Michael arrived first, pacing outside the small cafe. He hadn't slept the night before. Then James pulled in, taller than expected, more weathered, but when they hugged, there were no words, only recognition. Then David stepped out of a taxi, eyes already wet with tears. The 3 men stood there for a long moment, holding each other like shipwreck survivors who had finally reached land. Inside the cafe, time slowed. They traded childhood stories, laughed, discovered they shared strange similarities, favorite foods, nervous habits, the same dry humor. They didn't ask why they'd been separated. Not yet. That would come later. Today was about something else. Connection, healing, and the quiet, beautiful truth sometimes the family we think we lost is still out there, waiting to be found. The reunion gave them answers, but more than that, it gave them a second chance. After that day, the brothers stayed in close touch, texts, phone calls, even group chats. What started as careful conversations soon turned into real connection. A month later, they planned a weekend at James's home in Texas. They grilled, watched movies, and tried to recreate a childhood photo they'd never actually taken. It wasn't perfect. There were still awkward silences and moments of hesitation. But there was also something else, comfort. Their families met, wives, kids, grandkids. Suddenly, birthdays had new meaning. Holidays grew louder. Their once small family tree now had branches they never expected. They didn't force anything, they let it grow, naturally. They couldn't reclaim the past, but they could rewrite the future. And for them, that was enough. Life doesn't always give us the answers when we want them, but sometimes it gives us the people we didn't even know we were missing. For Michael, James, and David, their story isn't just about DNA. It's about timing, healing, and the simple, life-changing power of being found. They spent over 5 decades on separate paths, never knowing those paths would cross. But when they did, it wasn't too late. It was just the right time. Their story is a quiet reminder: it's never too late to reconnect, never too late to forgive, never too late to begin again. Whether it's a sibling, an old friend, or even a part of yourself you thought was gone, sometimes all it takes is one brave step. And who knows, on the other side of that step might be family. So if someone's been on your mind lately, don't wait. Make the call, send the message, dare to hope. Because miracles don't always look like lightning from the sky. Sometimes they look like 3 men in a cafe, rediscovering what it means to be home.